Hey everybody, this is Jonathan, and I wanted to wrap up this series on Axis and Allies Classic by taking a look at Axis strategies. Last video was on Allied strategies, so now let's look at things from the other side. Germany goes first, so we'll look at them. The Axis countries, Germany and Japan, it's important that they coordinate their objectives, but they don't need to coordinate on what I'll call a tactical level for the most part. Certainly not to the extent that England and the U.S. need to when they're sharing protection duties of their navies, using each other's carriers to land fighters, things like that. But it's important that the Axis powers be on the same page. And typically that means they both agree that they want to take out the Soviet Union as quickly as possible. Japan could try and fight the United States. There isn't really a whole lot of production to be gained, and unless the U.S. player is really not paying attention, you're not going to be able to take out Western United States. Maybe you'll get Alaska, maybe you'll get as far as Western Canada, maybe you'll do a cheap move or something and take Mexico, but you're going to lose them pretty darn quickly, probably as soon as the U.S. takes its next turn. And it's really not going to be a whole lot, it's not going to be very helpful. You might do it as a distraction, but I'll talk more about that when I get to Japan. So for Germany, you have three objectives, and they are, to a degree, going to be conflicting, or they're going to all be trying to draw from the same resources, and so you're going to have to choose what's most important at any given point. First item is going to be clearing out the British Navy. If the British don't have a navy, a lot of your coast is safe, at least for a turn or two until the U.S. gets in the war, possibly more if the U.S. isn't as focused on you as I'd certainly recommend their player to be. So every turn, you're going to want to look and see what the British Navy looks like, and can you legitimately do decent damage to it, kill those transports without neutering your own forces. Now remember that in this game, transports can fire back, and they can be taken as hits, which means you don't necessarily need the forces to completely wipe out their fleet, because they're likely to take transports as casualties first, especially because if they have some battleships, the battleships aren't double hit, which means a single hit takes them out. They're not going to be keen to lose one of those 24 IPC battleships, so they're probably going to lose their cheapest unit, their transports, their weakest defending unit first. And so if you fly up there, knock out a bunch of transports, through one round of combat, maybe 2 rounds of combat, you could accomplish what you need to accomplish and suffer minimal casualties. Depending on how the situation looks, you might decide that you don't want to worry about those British capital ships next turn, and that you've gotten through all their cannon fodder transports. You might as well take them out. That is certainly an option open to you. That's something that you want to play by ear. But just know you don't have to wipe them out if you only want to go 1 round of combat. You could just weaken their amphibious assault, the strength of their amphibious assault capabilities. Now, the second piece that you're going to be looking at is Africa. The Allies are eventually going to sweep in here, but I have seen a number of games where the Allies either don't pay attention to Africa, or they send maybe 1 transport from the U.S., maybe 1 from England or something, drop off a couple guys, don't really pay a whole lot of attention to it. In the meantime, Germany has some forces, it's running around. Eventually, the Allies will catch up, but in the meantime, Germany is packing away 5, 6, 7 production, and another transport load of units coming down from Germany, combined with what they have here, can counterattack and take out some of the Allied forces. And then because the Allies weren't paying attention, now they have to prep for another landing, which is a turn, can be a turn or 2 away if they aren't really prepared for it, or it's going to divert forces away from fighting Germany, slowing them down there. So causing trouble in Africa is how I'll define it, is a second objective for you. Now, the third objective, and I saved the best for last, probably the most important objective at all, is taking Corellia. every turn you're going to want to be paying attention, like I've talked about in the German video, and in the Russian video for that matter, to Corellia. And if you have the forces arrayed to take it, you're probably going to have a nice wall of infantry, maybe your fighters over here. Maybe you've taken a few turns to push a lot of infantry forward, and then you've got a stack of tanks. If you can push forward and take Corellia, you want to, because as long as you can take it and hold it, like England isn't going to sweep in here and take it back from you, on the very next turn. If you control this whole front for the Soviet Union has a good chance of collapsing, just because this is the roof over all of them. This also gives you a factory you can directly hit Moscow if you want to. Corellia is the key to this whole front over here, at least up to Moscow itself, if not the key to Moscow, because you can put units right. Your supply lines are a little bit stretched because of how many territories you have to go through, 2 to get to Corellia. So it's from Germany, it's going to take you 1 turn to get there and a second turn to attack. If you move across this way, it's going to take even longer. Southern Europe, again, 2 moves to Corellia and then to Moscow. But if you can put directly into Corellia, that is a far better position for you to be in. So that is the probably number 1 priority. Number 2, I would say, is dealing with the British Navy. And number 3 is Africa. In my opinion, it's possible that someone might disagree. I don't know anybody that would say Corellia is a lesser priority, but I could see somebody saying, Africa is more important than the British Navy. I'll leave that up to you, but those are the 3 things you want to pay attention to. Similarly, as Japan, you don't really want to be fighting the United States. Like I said before, that isn't really going to help you. No production to be gained, no production to be acquired that will be held for long over here. You're going to want to focus on this because if Germany's hemmed in, you really want to put the squeeze on Russia, so Russia can't devote as much up here and Germany can hopefully break out. At the same time, you can also meddle around in Africa. So maybe Germany meddled around a little bit, the Allies came in, took out the Germans, Allies start to pull out or move up this way. Now Japan comes in, now they've got to turn around or bring in more units, and it's a hassle and it's a distraction. And that's really what it's meant to be. There is a little bit of production to be had there. Certainly if they ignore you, grab up as much as you can. That's going to really be helpful. But this is meant to be more of a distraction than anything else, to prevent the Allies from reinforcing up here as much as they might want to. The other thing to do is Japan, and I started heading this way earlier in the video and then pulled back, is going to be distracting the U.S. Now, this doesn't mean that you're doing it to because you think it's some grand strategy to gain production. But if it looks like the U.S. is heavily going after Germany, it can be useful, both to you, well, maybe less to you because you're going to attract the U.S.'s attention, but certainly to Germany. And if it means the U.S. doesn't focus as much on helping Russia or hurting Germany, for your team as the Axis, this is a good thing. You could swing in to take Alaska or Western Canada, or maybe Mexico. Mexico is going to be the hardest one, but you could do that, not to take it, but just as a reminder to the U.S. player, hey, I'm over here, and you better devote resources. Otherwise, I am going to do really annoying things, if you're not paying attention. As long as you aren't expending a ton of your resources to do it, normally it just takes a little fleet protection and a transport, which you're probably going to have, over here somewhere. You can devote a transport to it, a couple guys just to drop off in some undefended or weakly defended territories. If your carry has a fighter, you've got a fighter, a coastal bombardment probably with a battleship, and 1 transport, you can start to do some annoying things and pull the U.S.'s attention away. The goal would be to expend as few resources doing this as you can and still be successful in it. You're not trying to make a last stand in Alaska where you dump a bunch of units there. You're not trying to hold on to these territories. You just want the U.S. to devote resources to chasing you down so that it doesn't devote as much over here. Maybe simultaneously you're in Africa, so now you've helped yourself because the US isn't going to have as much down here as it otherwise would. So your job as Japan is to really put the pressure on Russia, like I've talked about, while Germany is hemmed in the hopes that they'll break out, and then to be, for lack of a better term, an annoying distraction to the allies in Africa and then over here, so that they are distracted and don't focus their attention as much where it needs to be. So that is my take as the Axis in this game of Axis and Allies Classic. Hope you enjoyed it. This is going to be the last video in this series. If I come up with some additional ideas about things that I might want to talk about, I'll certainly make some more. Or if there's any videos that you guys would like to see about this game, just leave that in the comment section and I'll swing around and see what I can do.